targeted, including, crucially, Fort Tiuna. Fort Tiuna is the main military complex there, right in Caracas, and striking that as certainly would certainly be considered a major escalation. And now, given what the president said, we know that that has taken place. Well, according to the defense minister, helicopters were used in combat. There was helicopter gunships used on the part of the United States. And so he is speaking and has said that the government continues. He called the United States act criminal. He's asking for people in Venezuela to remain calm and to not panic. They want to avoid chaos and anarchy. He has announced a state of emergency across the entire national territory, and he has called up a deployment of all relevant military members there inside the country. So this is the first time we're really hearing a senior member of the Maduro government come out and talk like this, a very senior person, given that is the defense minister. But crucially, it's not Maduro himself. Given what the president has said, that's not a surprise. But this is the first time that we're hearing specifically from a senior member here.
Did the defense minister mention, have any information about how many injured, how many dead?
He did say, it's a good question. He said that because these attacks happened in an urban complex, which we know is true because we know that some of the main military bases in Caracas are in populated areas, even where there are hotels nearby. He says that they are currently checking on the numbers of injured or killed, but no word yet specifically as to what those numbers are.
Okay, ABC's Matt Rivers, thanks so much for that information. I want to go to Stephen Ganyard. He's an ABC News contributor. I want to get your reaction now that we've heard, since the last time we spoke, now that we have confirmation about this move from the White House to get Maduro and his wife, capture them and out of the country. What is your reaction?
It's extraordinary. When we talked a few minutes ago, that we saw that there were videos from Caracas showing multiple helicopters, which presumably were U.S. Special Operations helicopters, MH-47 Chinooks. There appeared to be a attack by helicopters on some part of Caracas, showing rockets going into an area that appeared to be coming from helicopters. So this would seem to be a big operation that went after the main elements of the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan military. So we know that the strikes were against numerous military targets, to include communication sites up in the hills above Caracas. But most interestingly, all of that probably was a diversion, or at least something to distract the Venezuelan military while the special operations folks were in snatching Maduro and his wife.
All right, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for that. I want to go to Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz. Martha, what is your reaction?
I think this was something that people were standing by for, but certainly not to this scale. We had 15,000 U.S. forces in the region. We have seen these strikes again and again on suspected drug boats, been asked about regime change. Certainly, Donald Trump had made threats about that, had pressured Maduro, but I don't think anyone was expecting something this large scale, and to capture the president and his wife in this sort of operation. President Trump has given hints about the CIA operations earlier this week, but nothing to this scale, and this is something we just have to watch. We certainly have the assets in the region to basically do anything we want at this point, and standing by for any reaction.
Maduro isn't recognized as a legitimate leader for many countries, from many countries. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how this is being received, this capture and takeout of Maduro and his wife, taking them out of the country. How is this being received on the world stage?
Well, on the world stage, certainly. I mean, it's shocking in many ways, whether he's seen as the legitimate leader or not. It's shocking. I'm certain some countries will be happy about this. Obviously, President Trump is happy about this after all these warnings. But on the world stage, to have the United States of America go in and grab, as President Trump has said, capture the Venezuelan president and his wife is startling around the world.
Talk to me more about the significance of that.
I think the significance of that is obvious. You have the United States involving itself in military operation that we chose to do, that President Trump chose to do without provocation beyond these drug boats, and certainly Congress will have something to say about this as well.
What are your thoughts about economically how this could impact oil prices and oil supply around the world?
Around the world, I mean, this is a major route here. We know that if there's any kind of blockade, and I know Steve Gannard has been talking about this a lot of late, if there's any kind of blockade, what happens now? Who else gets involved? I mean, that is a key thing to watch here, what the reaction is from our adversaries, certainly, from Russia, from Iran, from others who go in and out of there with oil. We've already got that tanker that the United States was pursuing, and that is something that the world will have to brace itself for as well.
All right. ABC's Martha Raddatz, thanks so much. Again, President Trump confirming this moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and they've been flown out of the country. We're going to go ahead and return you to your regular programming. Actually, before we do that, let's get back to Selena Wang from West Palm Beach with more information, I think, about from the White House.
We're actually learning a little bit more. The president is giving a brief interview to the New York Times where he celebrated the success of the mission to capture Maduro, saying, quote, a lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and people. He went on to say it was a brilliant operation, actually. And when the president was asked if he sought congressional authority or what is next for Venezuela, the president said he would address those matters during his news conference at Mar-a-Lago this morning. The president earlier posting that news conference is going to be at 11 a.m. So, Allison, still key outstanding questions about all of this. For one, where are they taking Maduro and his wife? What will the legal charges be? Was Congress notified? Was the CIA involved in this? Who led this operation? And do U.S. forces remain on the ground? Again, this comes as we have seen repeated threats over the last several weeks and months and steady ramp up of U.S. pressure against Venezuela economically, diplomatically, militarily. The U.S. had positioned the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including the world's largest aircraft carrier, this massive show of force that was really directed at President Nicolas Maduro. But so much of that pressure was really primarily focused at sea, the U.S. striking these alleged drug boats. So the president had been threatening these land strikes. Certainly a surprise to many that it has gone to this extent. The U.S. also had been pursuing seizing oil tankers linked to Venezuela. And I just want to point out one quote from the White House Chief of Staff that was given in a series of interviews to Vanity Fair that was recently published. She had suggested that this entire campaign may actually be about regime change, saying Trump, quote, wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle.
With the president declaring this a successful mission, do you know, and I know you're not on the ground in Venezuela, but are there still strikes happening over Venezuela?
That is a question. I mean, if we look and dissect the president's post, he is speaking of this past tense, saying has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader. Typically, you would not want to be posting that it's been successful if you're still in the middle of the operation. So it appears that for now, the military action has been completed. But as I just mentioned earlier, still key questions. Do U.S. forces remain on the ground? Where do things go from here? We're really in uncharted territory. And it's also unclear who led this operation. Just a few days ago, President Trump revealed himself what we know of to be the first land strikes inside Venezuela. The president saying they struck a dock in Venezuela that he claimed was used by the cartels to transport drugs overseas. It was reported by CNN that it was the CIA that carried out that strike using a drone. And then Steve Gannard has talked about why the CIA was used in that instance. It means the president doesn't need congressional authorization. Now what we're talking about here is an entirely different scale, a significant, a striking, stunning escalation.
Selena Wang, thanks so much for all of that great reporting. Let's go back to ABC News contributor Stephen Ganyard. Stephen, I'm curious what the ramifications you see at this moment are, knowing that, the U.S. dipped in, took Nicolas Maduro and his wife, captured them, and flew them out of the country. What are the ramifications of this?
I think this may be the end of military action, at least for now. Again, so hard to tell because, the sun hasn't come up. We don't have any reports other than Maduro is out of the country. But I do think that because they have Maduro, that the U.S. has done what they've needed to do. They've neutered the Venezuelan military, and they have Maduro. And so really there's not much reason for any follow-on U.S. military action. And so the fact that the U.S. has snatched Maduro will probably put him on trial, means that this may come to an end before it escalates. So that's an optimistic look at where we are this morning. But given that Maduro's out, the regime will essentially fall. The U.S. has hit ports. They've hit barracks. They've hit airfields. They've hit communication sites. So all of this means that the Maduro regime has essentially been brought down. And so this could be it in terms of what we're going to see out of military action by the U.S. for quite a while.
How involved do you see the U.S. in a new regime in Venezuela?
Well, hopefully the U.S. has learned some lessons about putting new regimes into place, and that will be up to the Venezuelan people. We know that there have been several candidates who've been Democrats, who've been likely legitimately elected, but the Maduro regime obviously stuffed the ballot boxes to make it look like Maduro was the elected representative. So I think what's most interesting here is what happens next, and whether those Democratic, at least those leaders who see a brighter democratic future for the people of Venezuela, whether they are able to have their voices heard, and whether they are able to overthrow the yoke of the Maduro regime.
And the overthrow of the regime, many will say that this was, obviously unexpected, but certainly, way over the top than what many would predict. Do you think this was the best way of upending the Maduro regime?
Well, it's certainly the cleanest, and it means that there'll be less military action, hopefully, going forward, and that Maduro will be brought to trial for his numerous crimes.
How do you think civilians in Venezuela are seeing this move this morning?
They're probably shocked. I mean, everybody, as Matt Rivers was reporting, he's talking to people in Caracas. The people in Caracas in Venezuela certainly had a feeling that something was going to happen given the degree and the size of the U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, but they didn't know it would be this bold, this daring. I mean, this is going to be very interesting to figure out how the U.S. Special Operations Forces went in there. How did they snatch the Maduro and his wife? How did they get the intelligence, all of the rehearsals that would have had to have gone into effect? Where did those helicopters launch from? Really just a stunning, amazingly successful, as of right now, operation by U.S. Special Operations Forces. Very
quickly, Stephen, what do you see the U.S. Congress saying, doing about this?
Well, they're not going to be happy. I'm not seeing any reports that Congress had been notified beforehand, and part of that may be that the president wanted to maintain operational security. I mean, if you're going to put Special Operations Forces on the ground in Venezuela and in Caracas, then operational security is absolutely essential here. And so maybe the notifications weren't done. The Congress is not going to be happy about that. But if this is the last of the military strikes, then maybe that it's all going to be a moot point.
Okay, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for all that great analysis. Again, President Trump confirming just moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of Venezuela. President Trump will be holding a news conference later today, happening at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go ahead and return you to your regular programming. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. We're going to have a full wrap-up later today on Good Morning America. I'm Allison Cossack. Have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
I'd never seen that many skeletal remains. Thousands. It's a serial killer case.
This killer, he's the dumber you've never heard of.
More and more men are going missing. And then the lead broke the case open. They discovered the
farm. The whole place was so bizarre.
There were mannequins